Hello, welcome back, Recapped Mystery here. Today, I'm going to explain an American science fiction comedy film, Idiocracy. Watch out and take care. The film's plot is set in the year 2005. The film begins with the narration of a turning point in human evolution. Most science fiction theories anticipate that humans' future will be more advanced, with smarter individuals. However, because humans are already at the top of the food chain, their evolution takes a negative turn. People become dumber over time. In such circumstances, Corporal Joe Bowers of the United States Army is approached by his superiors and asked to participate in an important experiment. Joe, who had planned to retire as a librarian, is irritated, but he must obey the orders. Then we're whisked away to a clandestine meeting of high-ranking military officials. General Collins shares his thoughts with the other officers. He claims that scientists have developed a human hibernation capsule that can keep humans alive indefinitely. It is done so that mankind can keep their best men in their prime and resurrect them in times of need. Joe was chosen as the first test subject since he is the most ordinary man in the military and has no direct family. Similarly, they needed a woman for the experiment but couldn't find one in the military. As a result, Collins chooses Rita, a prostitute. He shows the officers photos of him and Rita's manager upgrade having a good time, making everyone in the room feel uneasy. He concludes his presentation by stating that the volunteers will be placed in the pods tomorrow and that the experiment will last a year. Because the experiment is highly classified, the authorities present are not permitted to share the knowledge with anyone. Joe and Rita are in a waiting room together the next day. Joe introduces himself and inquires about Rita's industry. Rita claims to be a painter to avoid revealing that she is a prostitute. They are then both placed on ives and placed in two human hibernation pods. Rita panics and tries to get up, but Joe assures her that the scientists know what they're doing. He assures her that they will just stay inside for a year and that everything will be okay. Finally, the two are contained within the pods. When Cop Collins is captured in an attempted prostitution ring, things start to go bad. Upgrade is detained with him for being the ringmaster of a prostitution ring. As a result, no one is currently in charge of the hibernation pods. The military base has been closed due to a controversy, and the structure where the pods are housed has been dismantled. Joe and Rita have been inactive in the pod for several years. Although things appear to be awful for the two, they are far worse for humanity. Humans are becoming increasingly ignorant at an alarming rate. The graph of average intellect declines throughout time. Some individuals have high expectations that genetic engineering and technology will be able to reverse this evolutionary trend, but the world's smartest scientists are focusing on dumb projects like reversing hair loss and extending erections. Meanwhile, the population grows exponentially, and intelligence continues to fall until the year 2505. People have been unable to tackle basic human concerns such as rubbish disposal for many years, so the waste has been piled for ages with no plan in place. This results in the massive rubbish avalanche of 2505, and then, one day, a gigantic garbage landslip deposits Joe's hibernating pod in a random house. Joe emerges from the pod dazed and perplexed. Frito penned Joe is the resident of the house. Frito simply disregards a pile of garbage and a stranger in his home and continues to watch bizarre TV shows. He only stands up to ask Joe not to make any noise. We can see that his couch has a toilet so he doesn't have to get up all the time. He then throws Joe out the window. Joe finds the outside world perplexing, and he thinks to himself, so much has changed in just a year. But he has no idea he has arrived the year 2505. He notices a group of folks talking in slang and grunting by the side of the road. Joe understands them, but when he talks normally, they call him slurs and chase him away. Joe, who is similarly perplexed, decides to visit a local hospital. He approaches to the reception desk and informs her that he is from the army. The woman says nothing and simply touches one of the several buttons on her desk. Joe is directed to the diagnostic section on the right by a voice. He goes to get some water from a water fountain, but instead of water, it gives him an energy drink called the Brondo. When Joe asks a bystander where he may get water, The man mocks Joe for wanting to drink something that is only found in toilets. It is discovered that everyone on the planet utilizes Brawndo to bathe, drink, and go about their daily lives, whilst water is solely used in toilets. He next proceeds to the diagnostic section, where he must insert plugs into his mouth, ear, and anus. The health expert misaligns the plugs he has already placed in specified regions. Joe, disgusted, completes the treatment and is taken to the doctor. While waiting, he notices the year 2505 scribbled on a magazine but dismisses it as a typo. The doctor arrives and uses the phrase "kick-ass" to answer all of Joe's health-related queries. He also labels Joe retarded and demands a $5 billion charge. Joe then observes the number 2505 written on the bill. He finally realizes that he has been trapped within the pod for 500 years. Joe almost doesn't believe it and rushes to the window, only to be astonished by the city's current state. Buildings are crumbling on top of one another, with some kept together by ropes. Furthermore, the city is overrun with rubbish. Meanwhile, the doctor becomes concerned since Joe lacks a citizen tattoo on his wrist. Joe panics and flees the hospital, while the doctor reports him to the authorities for failing to pay his hospital costs. Joe has awoken to a world in turmoil, according to a voice. The economy is in shambles, a massive dust bowl has decimated all food sources, and the country's #1 film is titled S. He goes to see the Oscar-winning film, only to spend 90 minutes staring at someone's rear. He is arrested at night for being unstable and hauled to court. There, he is assigned a lawyer, who happens to be Fredo Penjo, the first person Joe encountered in 2505. Fredo mocks him while the entire court laughs. Joe makes a reasonable case and explains why he is unstable, but the lawyers and court laugh at him. Finally, the judge finds him guilty and sentences him to prison. Meanwhile, Rita exits the pod and attempts to reach her boss and boyfriend Upgrade. She is unable to reach him because the phone requests $2,000 from her. Just then, she is approached by a man whom she dupes and robs. Simultaneously, Joe is led to an automated tattoo parlor where residents are given the identity tattoo that makes them scannable. When the machine asks for his name, Joe begins to explain that he has no idea what is going on. As a result, the machine interprets his name as Not Sure and tattoos it on his wrist. People around him begin to refer to him as Not Sure. He is next subjected to an amplitude and IQ exam, as well as questions regarding basic addition. Joe properly answers all of them and is startled to learn that the people around him are unable to identify shapes. He is then escorted to the prison. He eventually realizes that everyone in today's world is foolish, so he tells the guard that he is supposed to be released from jail today. The idiot guard lets him walk away, but the alarms detect that an inmate has escaped and the cops chase him around the streets. Joe manages to break away from them and returns to Fredo's. He believes that a time machine has been constructed within the last 500 years and seeks Fredo's assistance in obtaining one. Fredo refuses to assist Joe, but Joe convinces him by saying he will pay him $8 billion for his assistance. Fredo eventually admits that he knows where the time machine is. The police arrive and knock on the door, looking for Joe. They flee via the window and drive to the museum. On their way, they come across Rita, who is still duping the same guy. Rita gets in the car, anxious that Upgrade will come after her for the money she owes him. Unaware to the fact that he is already dead, something from outside the automobile scans Joe's wrist as they travel, and the cops are told of his whereabouts. The car's battery dies, and they are forced to abandon it. The police then approach the automobile and fire at it. Soon, a swarm of individuals joins and begins fighting. Joe, Fredo, and Rita flee in the hopes of reaching the time machine. Joe then takes the two to Costco, which has become a one-stop shop for all things. He even claims to have studied law while working at Costco. Rita goes to the loo while they wait for the metro. Joe's wrist is unintentionally scanned before she returns, and the entire area is alerted to the presence of a criminal. The metro arrives, and Fredo boards, but Joe waits for Rita, only to be apprehended by police. This time, though, he is escorted to the White House rather than prison. A befuddled Joe meets President Camacho and his secretaries there. Camacho makes fun of him, claiming that he expected Joe's head to be bigger because he is intelligent. The IQ test Joe took in prison stunned everyone because he had the highest IQ they'd ever seen. As a result of his intellect, the president appoints Joe as the next Secretary of the Interior. To Joe's surprise, they also declare him the world's brightest man. Everyone then travels to the House of Representatives, where the president announces that their new Secretary of Interior, Mr. Not Sure, will tackle the problems of food scarcity and dust storm. He also pledges to release Joe from prison if he solves the problem. Following that, a cabinet meeting is conducted in which the secretaries beg Joe to say something clever. Joe says some random difficult words, leading them to feel he is intelligent. Then Joe instructs Frito to sketch a map showing the location of the time machine until the secretaries are distracted. He then leads them to a field where crops are supposed to be produced. He also requests that they locate Rita, as she may be able to assist them with the crops. Everyone has gathered in the field, where Frito surreptitiously hands Joe the map. Rita arrives at the same moment. Joe takes her aside, intending to flee using the map, but his plan falls apart when he realizes Frito's map is simply a line. Joe then realizes that the fields have been watered with the energy drink Brondo. He convenes a cabinet meeting to discuss the use of water instead of Brondo. His concept is despised by the secretaries. Instead of arguing with them, he simply informs them that he can communicate with the plants and that they require water. Joe is unaware that the energy drink caused salt to form on top of the soil, killing vegetation and causing dust storms. As a result, he is truly resolving their issues. Everything goes as planned for a few days. However, due to decreased production, the energy drink Brondo's stockpiles will soon go to zero. This means that half of the population is unemployed. They riot in front of the White House. The news reports that Joe has been charged for causing others to be unemployed and has been found guilty. He was sentenced to 1 night in rehab. In the New World, rehabilitation occurs when a criminal is pursued by a huge truck in an arena as a crowd cheers for the truck. The rehabilitation process typically concludes with the criminal's death. Joe is transported to the arena, while Rita returns to the White House, ready to join Frito in the time machine. National television broadcasts the rehabilitation. As he travels around in a modest automobile, Joe is pursued by a gigantic murdering Dirk. Rita then discovers a rose plant blossoming outside. She realizes Joe's suggestion to water the plants was successful and asks Frito to drive her to the arena. She intends to put the harvests on television in order to have Joe's punishment commuted. Meanwhile, Joe is still attempting to flee the death vehicle. Rita arrives on time and bribes a videographer to accompany Frito and photograph the developing crops. She then enters the monitoring room and takes control of the control panel. Frito finally makes it to the field and begins filming the crops. The video is shown on the big screen. When President Camacho sees this, he saves Joe from execution and commutes his sentence, causing the crowd to explode in applause. Everyone is now attending a frat party in the White House. Rita admits that she does not want to come home since she prefers the future. Joe is astonished, but he does not push her to accompany him. The two exchange their final goodbyes, but before Joe leaves, the president summons him to the stage and appoints him vice president. Everyone stares at Joe with hopeful eyes, convincing him to stay in 2505. Then someone describes the time machine as a foolish ride. Frito leads a perplexed Joe to the machine, where it is revealed that the time machine is simply a children's ride. A few months later, Joe is elected President of the United States, and Rita becomes his wife and the First Lady. A new period began under his guidance, and people hoped that humans may once again be intelligent. He even has 3 children with Rita who are thought to be the brightest in the world. The end. Please subscribe to assist the channel, turn on notification and leave a like. Thank you for taking the time to watch. See you again soon.